the farms. First, the damages the large carnivores are causing here in reindeer herding areas. Second, the collapse of the cooperative units of the reindeer herders. And third, very important part, the future, the concern of the young people in future, their possibility to develop their culture here in Lapland. Okay, we continue. Our next speaker is Sanna Hast from the Reindeer Herders Association, and she's talking about the economic impact of large carnivores in rural enterprises.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Reindeer herding is among the oldest livelihoods still practiced widely in the Arctic areas. Nowadays, it continues to be a vital element of northern culture. Reindeer herding is a vibrant rural livelihood with widespread economic effects. It has great impacts on both local and national cash flows and employment, which is why the economy of reindeer herding is far more complex and interesting than just the direct cash flow from selling the meat. In Finland, there are three main lines of reindeer businesses: meat, leather, and tourism. Now, it goes without saying that meat processing is the biggest single business sector directly connected to reindeer herding. Reindeer meat in Finland is very highly valued. It is seen as healthy and ecologically produced meat. The work towards high quality standards and development of different meat products has been a success in Finland. Reindeer meat is indeed real luxury food. It is also the only Finnish meat product that has got 3 highly valued European Union label of protected designated of origin. The other, nowadays most rapidly growing business is based on reindeer fur and skin. The connection to culture and traditions is apparent in the traditional costumes and handicrafts. Today, however, reindeer leather is also highly valued and a wanted material in the global fashion industry. Fashion houses, for example, Armani, Louis Vuitton, and Ralph Lauren are using Finnish reindeer leather as their eco-friendly luxury product. Reindeer leather is the most exclusive leather in the world. The third main line in reindeer business is tourism. Unfortunately, the economical value of reindeer-related tourism has not yet been comprehensively studied. However, if we look just at the sector of reindeer tourism farms, it is as big in euros as the meat production sector. When it comes to tourism, the value of reindeer and reindeer herding for the Finnish and Lappish images are uncountable. For example, in traveler surveys, reindeer is always in the top 3 of the travelers must see, eat, or experience in Lapland. Reindeer and reindeer herding are at the very core when we are talking about the image of Lapland or the Arctic. As we can see, the reindeer truly has extensive and it seems unlimited potential for the northern economies. Now, according to a recently published Swedish study on the economy of reindeer herding in Finland and Sweden, the overall cumulative economic impacts are indeed widespread. Just looking at some numbers, the direct and indirect jobs provided mount up to altogether 15,000 jobs. Reindeer business operates at a total turnover of 1,300 million euros. This makes reindeer herding a €1 billion business. 2/3 of this comes from Finland. This means, of course, that from an economic perspective, here in Finland we are indeed, in fact, slightly more advanced in the reindeer business than our neighbors. Now, moving on to the relation of large carnivore affecting the reindeer herding economy, I'm now going to focus on two core issues. The current situation with large carnivores has caused a two-way pressure. Firstly, there are constantly rising costs. And secondly, and simultaneously, a continuing drop in the meat production. The connection between increased damages and economics is therefore direct and immediate. As Katarina Ilofsson's and her co-researchers research in Sweden on the economic impact of large carnivores on rural enterprises found, the lamb and cattle farmers affected by predation devote substantial further work to prevent and cope with predators' attacks. This is certainly true also for reindeer herders. Costs are rising due to searching carcasses and preventive actions. Searching for carcasses takes usually several hours. It involves driving long distances, which also increases working hours as well as petrol usage in snowmobiles and cars. In some cooperatives, reindeer are herded away from the worst-hit pasture lands to more safe areas. This means some parts of pastures cannot be used, and the pressure in these more safe areas grows. Together with other land use pressures, this leads to many kinds of problems, such as reindeer herding to farmlands and gardens, reindeer heading, not herding, sorry, to farmlands and gardens, causing damages and badwill, even conflicts, among the reindeer herders and other people living in these areas. Other measures are also taken to prevent damages, such as herding and, in some cooperatives, keeping the reindeer in fences during winter. This is again increasing work expenses. Also, feeding and infrastructure investments are expensive. These are not compensated for. This looks familiar also from the other presentation. Now, for example, in the Käsivarsi cooperative, reindeer herding in practice is non-stopping, 24/7 during the winter time, mainly due to large carnivores. This activeness increases expenses. Herders spend more time with the reindeer to keep the predators away and to see if there have been damages to the herd. According to research, the annual expenses in Käsivarsi amount to over 120,000 euros, which is more than the paid monetary compensations received for found carcasses. Keeping in mind that only a part of these carcasses are ever found. And damages caused by large carnivores are happening more and more often despite of these intense actions trying to prevent them. The preventive measures are in fact not enough. Now, the second pressure I mentioned earlier was the continuing drop in the meat production. Meat production is the core income of a reindeer herder and is, as we all know, directly related to the number of slaughtered reindeer. To put this into numbers, in 2005, the number was 125,000 slaughtered animals. Last year, we had 72,000 reindeer slaughtered. The estimate of this year is 85,000 slaughtered. Since 1995, when Finland joined the European Union, the slaughter rates have dropped 42%. we have lost over 1 million kilos of reindeer meat in 20 years. The slight increase in the slaughter rates visible in the past 2 years, on the other hand, is directly connected to the number of given permits for removing particularly harmful large carnivores from the areas. For example, this trend is particularly visible when we look at the slaughter rates of Keminsombio cooperative, which is the biggest herding cooperative in Finland. Calculated according to the price level of the year 2014, the slaughter income in 2005 was well over 2.3 million euros, and last year it was just under 940,000 euros. The slaughter income has basically collapsed. At the same time, the number of breeding females has decreased drastically. Losing one animal is always a loss in itself, but it is also a loss of the future unborn calves. This affects a crucial element of the sustainability of reindeer herding, the breeding. Successful breeding is a long-term process. It will take up to 4 years to raise another reindeer mature enough for reproduction. When more female calves have to be left alive, there will be less to slaughter and the income of the herder decreases. When herders are forced to leave also weak reindeer alive, it undermines the work they have done with breeding over the previous years and weakens the overall quality of the herd. The severe effects are undeniable. The slaughter rates and income of reindeer herders have decreased drastically. The situation is bound to have also other than solely economical effects. Financial unpredictability and uncertainty for the future have become the most significant strains for the current reindeer herders. For reindeer herders, as for many of us, it is particularly important to feel self-sufficient financially. Herding should provide for the household, but for the moment in some areas it is not doing so because of the predators. Also, part of the income is coming from compensations, but as research found, these are not really wanted, even though they have to be taken to keep the finances together. The compensations paid by the government are the last point I want to focus on. The compensations are needed and they have to be perceived as fair amongst reindeer herders. However, there are some challenges with the compensations at the moment. The first problem is that they do not cover all the costs of labor that goes into searching and the preventive actions. The same issue was noted in Ilofsson's study. They conclude that the recommended compensation for direct costs should no longer include compensation for extra work or other indirect costs. Instead, they suggest that direct costs should be compensated by a separate flat rate payment based on the number of animals of each herd keeper for those herders who are in predator areas. The flat rate could be calculated from the average indirect costs of lost productivity and increased labor. The other point is that compensations do not cover for the losses caused to the breeding work, which is essential in meat production. Everybody wants to produce the best possible meat. To be able to achieve this, one has to have enough selection in their reindeer to decide which are left alive and which are slaughtered. Today, the situation only allows the herder to think how many can be saved and still keep their economies running. The overall situation cannot be solved by monetary compensations alone. The compensations are just a band-aid, not a cure. Rising costs and declining income are an untenable combination that crumbles the basis of practicing reindeer herding. The critical issue for keeping the productivity of reindeer herding in a decent level is that when it comes to coexistence with large carnivores, there have to be means to control the number of losses. This can only be done by controlling the populations of large carnivores at reasonable levels. And in order to achieve this, permits for removing particularly harmful large carnivores from these areas are also needed. Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.